We saw in our previous video that when we want to talk about the mean, we can have both a population mean, represented by that symbol mu, and we also can have a different sample mean, represented by x bar. So let's take a look at an example where we can kind of see what's happening when we want to talk about that. We're going to use the pulse rate from the class survey to be able to compute both the population mean, so the mean of the entire data set, and then we're going to take two different samples. Each sample is going to be a sample of size 6, and we're going to see how we can compare those sample means to the population mean. So the data set we're going to look at is a population mean from our class survey. Here is our data set in our StatCrunch data set, and you can see the pulse rate is here under this column, and there are 32 data entries for that particular pulse rate. What we want to do is I want to take the population mean, and then I want to take a sample mean from this population. So how do I go about doing that? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, just to make everything concise, I'm going to take two different samples from within this population of pulse rates. So to do that, I can go to Data, Sample. I'm going to choose the pulse rate column, which I'm considering to be the population now. I want my samples to be of size 6, and I'm actually going to do this 2 separate times. So let's take 2 samples here. And I want to store this information in the table so that I can find the mean of the particular samples. So we'll choose, no, I don't want to do that. So we'll just choose it like this, compute, and it put it in the table for me. I forgot. Okay. So it says the new columns, samples 1 and 2, were added to my data table. And you'll notice that it actually sticks it in at the very end of my data set. So I had to scroll here to the end of my information that was already contained in the data set to find these samples. So here I have sample 1, which pulled 6 different pulses from that population sample. And here's my sample 2, which pulled 6 different pulses from that population. So what do I want to do? I want to be able to compare population mean to sample means. So we can do that rather quickly by going to Stat, Summary Stats, column. Let's choose pulse rate as well as sample 1 and 2. And I'm really only interested in looking at the mean for all 3 of these columns. So now we hit compute. In the table right here, you can see that I have a mean for the pulse rate, and then I have a separate mean for the sample 1 and a different mean for sample 2. And what I want to highlight to you here is that although we have a pulse rate for the population, notice that when I pull a sample from the population, I'm going to get a different mean each time. And the mean may or may not be close to the population's mean, depending on the numbers that were randomly chosen. So this is really just to enforce the idea that when we think about sampling, the values that we're going to get are not always going to be the same. In other words, we are sampling 6 different values from this pulse rate. And every time I take that sample, I should be generating a different combination of 6 from the population. That's going to give me then a different average or a different mean each time I sample. We'll see later on how the sample mean and the population mean relate to each other a little more closely, but that's for later on in the course.